So, statement of purpose are used by lots of different organizations. So, they can be used for fellowships or grants like scholarships. They can be used for academic purposes to try and get a summer research job or applying to graduate school if that's something that you're interested in doing. They can sometimes be used in a variety of straight up job applications, but they all cover roughly the same thing. The next few slides are going to focus on graduate admissions because it's easiest to find the specific questions they're asking from universities. But I think you'll start to see there's a lot of similarity there. And so you can kind of expect that what we say here would probably apply to a job application if they were asking for a statement of purpose or a personal statement. And there's a few different words, terminology that people will use to describe these, and we'll talk about that as well. So they all roughly cover the same main parts. What have you already done, both your professional and your personal history? And your professional history doesn't just include jobs, it includes your academic history as well. Classes you've taken, things you've done in classes, etc. What do you want to do? So what are your goals? Why do you want to do those? Your purpose? Where and with whom? So basically, are you a good fit for whatever thing you're applying to? Whether it's a specific university or a specific job with a specific company. You want to talk about how you fit into what they already have going on. And lastly, why should it be you as opposed to someone else who may be applying for the same opportunity? And this is where you can talk about your preparation, leadership skills, determination, which is sometimes called grit as well. So what are these? It says graduate admission committees, but let's assume that this is sort of any sort of application committee looking for, because again, I think a lot of the stuff listed here would be relevant for a hiring committee who's hiring someone for a job also. So basically they're looking for evidence that you'll succeed wherever this particular place happens to be. So if it's a graduate admissions committee, they want to see that you're going to succeed in the academic and research aspects of that particular program. If it's a job, they want to know that you're going to succeed in whatever the job happens to be, assuming that they give you the proper training. And the second part is that you're a good mutual match to the culture, activities, and personnel in that particular organization. So a lot of the things that they ask for are prior courses. Many places will ask for your transcripts. That's why grades are so important. So GPAs along with that. Graduate schools may ask you to take some standardized tests known as the graduate record exam, the GRE, and there's also a physics subject version of that, which is known as the physics GRE or PGRE. I am part of a group that is working to try and get as many universities as possible to stop using those tests because they've been shown to be very biased and relate more to the economic health, basically the wealth of your family, more than any other aspect of you or other people. So this year, because of COVID, all of these schools are not using them, and we're hoping that this will actually be an opportunity for schools to realize that they can do their admissions processes without using these tests. They're also very expensive tests to go for. So it sort of depends on what your career path is. You may still be required to take at least the GRE, but when that time comes, you talk to us and we'll let you know sort of where the landscape is at that point in time. They're going to look for endorsement by other faculty or people who know you well. Those are usually done in the letters of recommendation that we talked about last time. And then they're going to want to know about you. So your research experience, the skills that you bring to this opportunity, leadership skills, if you've been able to overcome any barriers, and that could be a variety of things, and we'll talk about some of that. But so for example, 60% of students at CSUSB are first generation students. So that alone is overcoming a barrier, even getting in and completing an undergrad degree when no one else in your family or your parents hadn't before, because you're doing it without the advice that maybe other students were able to get, that experience from the family. And lastly, they want to know your career plans. Is this a good fit for what you want to do long-term in your career? So here I've pulled from a few different campuses around the state what they're looking for, so you can get an idea of the specifics that a particular institution might be asking for. And again, many of these may be similar to what job applications would have. It's easier for me to go through and find the requirements for a university graduate program than it is for a particular job opportunity, because it'll only be open while the job is open. So UC Merced Physics asks for a statement of purpose along with a presentation. And so that presentation ends up being sort of a proxy for an interview. They're looking for your research and study interests, sample of your ability to write. That presentation can be the difference between getting in or not. So it's a big opportunity to sell yourself. And they really want to know why you're interested in attending that specific program. And a lot of places are looking for that. Why us? They want to make sure that you're not just blindly applying to 20 different places. And you may be, I mean, hopefully you don't have to go through and do 20 different places, but they still want to know that they are special in your eyes, just like you want to know that you're special in their eyes, right? Like this needs to be a mutual matching of things. The University of Washington has more specific guidelines. And they actually split things into two. So their statement of purpose is more on your interest and goals. Some places will limit it to a page, others will say two. For ours, we'll focus on two because you can always split and cut things down. And then they also have an optional personal history statement. So sometimes this would be included in that statement of purpose. They're splitting it. But their personal history statement includes a lot of the experience aspect of you, and so why you want to go through and do the thing that you're doing, but why you individually want to go through and do that. UC Davis also splits these into two and gives even more specifics for each of them, so I'm not going to go through and read all of this now. Again, the slides are on Blackboard, so you can see and read the individual things later. You can get an idea of sort of what they're looking for each of these different statements. And hopefully you're starting to see some of the commonalities between the requests for these different statements. The last one I'm going to go show you is from Santa Barbara. Again, similar sorts of things in terms of how they're breaking things out. Statement of purpose, talking about what you're interested in, past academic work, etc. And then personal achievements and contributions. And then they have a little blurb about the resume or curriculum vitae, which we talked a little bit about last week and we'll come back to again in a future class. So one thing I want to also highlight, and this is less so for a job application and more so for applying to a graduate program, whether that's a master's or PhD program, is that often these statements are also used to decide who gets additional fellowships. So essentially additional money that they will pay you in order to entice you to come to their school. So it may be that you get a fellowship that allows you to not have to be a teaching assistant for a year or two or three. And so you get paid more and have to work less, basically, or can focus your work on your classes and your research. So these statements often are the way that they go through and decide who gets those fellowships, and those fellowships can be across the entire university. I'm trying to think. I don't know of any of our students, graduates from our particular campus and department who have earned those types of fellowships before, but I do know of scholars in the Calbridge program, which I mentioned last week, that have earned special fellowships based on the work that's in their statements. So that's why they can be so important. They can help you basically gain an advantage over all of the other graduate students for those applying to graduate school. So again, just to reiterate the main things, and if you go back through and look at those statements again, somewhere in those two statements or a single statement, depending on what the particular institution asked for, you'll see each of these 5 items being requested. So this is sort of how we want to frame what we're going to go through and think about when we're creating a statement of purpose. So what I would like us to go through and do next is I'm going to break you all out into 3 breakout rooms. Maybe I'll end up doing 2 for each type. We'll see. I'm going to use sort of who wrote to what to divide up the groups. So this won't be based on your career groups. It'll be based on a quick look at what you submitted. And so let me briefly go through and show you what we're going to have each group do before I take a minute to then divide you up into these groups. So each group is going to have a set of questions. You'll be in the group for about 20 minutes. So for the group focusing on career goals, each one of you will jot down some sort of organization, and this could be a university as sort of the next step. It could be a particular job, Tesla or SpaceX or something like that, that you would like to join and why. Go around your breakout room sharing the choices that you came up with and try and figure out some common why themes, like why you happen to be interested in that particular job. And if there is time, have each person jot down the steps that they need to go through and take between now and achieving that goal. And that could be a 5-year goal or a 10-year goal. Some of that depends on where you are in your academic career. Some of it depends on the requirements it takes in order to be able to apply for those kinds of jobs. So there's a huge range here, and that's okay. Group 2 will focus on highlighting your past academic experiences. Each person will jot down their favorite class or favorite assignment and why, so you can start thinking about how you might be able to frame what you've done here at CSUSB into something that could go into one of these personal statements. And again, agree on some of the common why themes that come up with this. And if there's time, have a few people, have a few people share their definitions of research. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more when you all come back. This should say group 3. For group 3, you're going to talk about outreach and giving back. So this is often where people's leadership experience comes from, although sometimes it comes from a specific job. So have each person jot down their favorite outreach or giving back experience and why it's their favorite. Share them just like the others. And then try and agree on some next steps in making those experiences a central part of one's mission. So if there's something that you really want to focus on, think about, apologies for the background noise, think about how and why you might be able to sort of incorporate that in maybe not your daily life, but in your academic life right now, so that you can get to the point where you can achieve those goals down the line. And then some follow-up stuff there. So again, I'm going to give you all 20 minutes to do this. Let me take a look at your responses again real quick. And based on them, I may just straight up put you in random groups. We'll see. Looking at what different people wrote to, I think it may just be faster and easier to put you into random groups. And that means that even if you didn't have a chance to write to one of these areas, maybe this will give you an opportunity to at least think about it. So before I break you out, does anyone have any questions at this point? Feel free to drop them in the chat. The last piece, or one of the last pieces, is about research. So some of you chatted about that as part of your question. So if we pull up the generic dictionary definition, you can see that it basically relates to very careful or studious searches or examinations, or collecting of information about a particular subject. So when you're going through and writing these statements and they're asking about what sort of research you've done, that doesn't necessarily have to mean working directly with a faculty member outside of class, doing a specific research project. If you haven't had that opportunity yet, you may still have been able to gain some skills in the classroom or doing something else. So that's something to think about, trying to frame that piece. Those who want to go into careers where you need to get a master's or a PhD, it is very important that you try and have at least one research experience, ideally a summer research experience, but academic year could work too, before you do those applications to graduate school. So for some of you who are graduating not this year but next year, you really want to try and get something for this coming up summer. That can be a very important piece to your application to a graduate school program. But even for job opportunities, they're going to want to be able to see that you can work independently on some sort of project, and research is a great way to demonstrate that. You can use talk about that experience and how you were able to go through and do that. That's what they'll want to know moving forward. So again, important elements of your statement of purpose or personal statement to think about when you're going through and writing. And I've said many of these along the way, but purposely outline them here on the slide. And again, you all have access to these slides, so I'm not going to read them individually, but these are the things that you want to think about. And this is why I had you all answer many of these types of questions. So you can see that each one of those questions essentially related to one of these types of things. So this leads us to a sort of the biggest project that we're going to do this term in this class, which is essentially writing these statements of purpose. So here are the various deadlines that we'll have. So this will take us through the end of the semester. So you probably didn't have time to go through and write about every single aspect on that Google form. So you've got a little bit more than a week to go through and do that. To at least get something down. Again, you hit submit, it should have emailed you. So use that link so you don't just end up creating another record. You don't have to start from scratch. You can keep adding to what you already put in. Then you can utilize what you wrote in there, thinking about those questions, copy and paste that into one big document so you can start working on what your personal statement should be. So this should be no more than 2 pages. It'll be due towards the end of October for your first draft. And then we'll use those drafts to do a peer review of each other's statements. So you all will give each other feedback on these statements based on that particular draft. And I'll do this in some sort of small group sort of thing. So I'll work out the details there. Then your second draft of your personal statement, and you'll also submit your curriculum vitae, your CV, in the middle of November. That will be to get feedback from me personally. And then your final draft will be due, that's the Friday of exam week. So this is sort of the last thing that you'll submit for this class. Does anyone have any questions about the personal statement project itself?